Hey there guys, Conceptual Concept 6.9 here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest again, and today I really wanted to discuss running a red dot and a magnifier versus a ACOG and a top-mounted red dot for your general purpose rifle. Now, I only have two ACOG types to present here today, so we're not going to delve too deep into the other options because I really don't have a lot of experience behind them. But generally, I do believe that your main rifle probably should have some form of magnification, regardless where you live, even urban, anything like that. There's a really big misconception in the tactical community by a lot of guys that everyone is going to be standing in the open, not trying to hide themselves from anything. It is the flat range. That silhouette target at 500 yards is how people will actually be shooting you in end of days. That's not the truth. People don't want to get shot. What's your first reaction when you are shooting and getting shot at? You want to make yourself as small as of a target as possible. You want to get behind cover, concealment, anything to make it hard for them to hit you, because naturally most of us don't want to die. So I'm not going to delve too deep into it, but I just think you should have magnification. You can fight me on that. So the two options I'm presenting are the ACOG red dot versus red dot magnifier. There are multiple other options. I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. But to keep this from being an extensive video, I'm just doing those two. I find that they are really kind of the cheapest buy-in for quality options. So let's get into the pros of the red dot magnifier. So in my opinion, the biggest pro is that it is the most versatile option. One really cool part, you have multiple rifles with red dots. It is super easy to pop this off, install it on another red dot equipped rifle, and suddenly you have magnification there as well. Now that might be a little more challenging with multiple optic heights, but if you're running the same optic height, it's super easy to swap. Another benefit of being able to pull this guy off is you can remove it for shooting under night vision, so it's not in the way. Now even a flipped over magnifier is in the way shooting under night vision, so you can remove it for that. Definitely beats the crap out of the ACOG in a few ways there. And then you can also stow it away to keep your rifle handy and light if you don't need magnification at the time. Another benefit is you can pull it out of your pack and use it as a standalone observation device. So you don't even have to have your rifle to use the magnification off this, so it's multi-purpose. This is the cheapest you can get into a quality 1x optic with magnification options. Generally, you can get into a decent magnifier for $200 to $300, and about the same for a red dot. Holosun, I know a lot of people hate on Holosun. A lot of people love them. I personally love them. They hold up incredibly well. They punch well above their weight class in terms of price versus performance. Now, that being said, if you do want to get a little fancier, you can definitely get into something like an EOTech and an EOTech magnifier for like $1,100-1,200, which pushes it a little bit lower still than the ACOG combo for the higher end. So definite benefit to running this. So past that, the red dot magnifier also generally provides you a better cheek weld if you're running lower optics. So recoil control is a thing, and having 4 points of contact versus 3 with a top-mounted red dot on an ACOG is definitely beneficial for trying to shoot fast. Now, people can still do it, but it's easier with 4 points of contact. So really, this is optimized more for closer range engagements. So the top-mounted red dot is going to be a little slower than this option. So if you're going for more of a closer range setup, this is a good option. So one of the biggest downsides, in my opinion, is most red dots and magnifiers don't offer any ballistic drop compensation or any range finding capabilities. So I know that at the flat range, it's super easy to get those hits at 300, 400, 500 yards, no problem. But you also know those distances. Out here, it's kind of hard to guess. things aren't consistent out in nature. It's a little harder to figure out exact distances by looking at it. Now, a trained eye, someone who's really good at it, might be able to get some eye close. But having those features in your magnification option are definitely beneficial. Now, I do know Primary Arms makes their ACSS red dot and their magnifier with a range finding capability. That would add that option, but again, this isn't a higher end option with those available features. So it's a trade-off there. So next big con, and this is kind of a tie with the first, is you have 4 pieces of glass, 1 aiming solution. So big downside to that is your glass clarity generally on the magnifiers isn't as good as the ACOG anyways, but then you're also looking through a red dot, which generally has even worse clarity than anything, so you've got stacked lack of clarity. Now, you can definitely still use this to make hits, but what I've found is dawn and dusk, when the light's coming down through my lens, it makes it hard to make out targets. You get a lot of glare. You have a lot of issues with that. That's just my personal experience. Actually, once I was zeroing with a magnifier, the sun was behind the target, and I ended up taking the magnifier off and zeroing with the red dot just because I was having so many issues actually identifying the target and centering on it. So that is a huge downside there. Now, another downside, this doesn't need a lot of conversation, but compared to an ACOG, it does require mechanical movement to drop from magnified to not magnified. So not a huge downside, but compared to the ACOG, where you just drop up and down to switch from 1 times to 3 or 4 times, kind of a downside. So next up would be a con to this, which ACOG share, is your eye relief. Magnifiers generally have a pretty piss poor eye relief because they are a prism scope on the inside. So you have a fairly small eye box, fairly small eye relief, just a challenge of running prism scopes in general. Another downside is their glass quality. Even the better ones are not ACOG glass quality, so there's that. Generally, you do have a lower field of view. And lastly, there are batteries required to run this option. Now, it's not a huge issue with modern red dots with their 5-year battery life, but if you're running something like an EOTech, it's definitely a bigger thing to be concerned about versus an ACOG red dot option. So let's start with the biggest pro in my eyes for the ACOG with top-mounted red dot, which is having some ballistic compensation, and range finding capabilities. So this really makes it fairly idiot-proof to get first-round hits out at distance. Now, the range finding capabilities are rudimentary, so they'll get you close, but against like a torso, it'll give you a better option or better capability, and definitely against like a head or shoulders, it'll get you a better first round hit capability or get you close where you could probably walk your way in. So definitely like that option. I don't know if you've seen, which I know I've shown it several times, but this guy, I'm able to get first round hits on 10-inch plates out to 400 yards, no problem. So next benefit is that ACOGs really have some of the best glass clarity and some of the best field of view on the market. So shooting out at medium range is really easy to do observation find targets because you have a really wide field of view. You're really able to take advantage of that with the 4x ACOG. So also, ACOGs are fairly lightweight. This option here probably weighs in fairly similar to something like an aim point and magnifier combo. It's under 20 ounces, and most aim point magnifier combos are right in there as well. It's definitely going to weigh under a EOTech magnifier combo. And the other option we'll discuss, this is not going to have the field of view pro, but it is going to have the weight pro, is this TA50 ACOG. So this TA50 ACOG only weighs 10.5 ounces with the red dot mounted, which weighs less than my Holosun magnifier just standalone. So I have both a red dot and a magnification option with ballistic reticle compensation in here for less weight than just the red dot alone. So big benefit there. Now, on the last few benefits here, I really think this is the fastest way to switch between 1 power and magnification. It's really simple. You're using your red dot and you drop down and suddenly you have magnification. Really, really easy, really handy, fast, intuitive. I think it beats the snot out of red dot magnifiers for switching between. And that might be beneficial if you're scanning, if you're doing any shooting up close and suddenly you're like, oh crap, there's a guy 500 yards away. Drop your head down, you have that magnification. So huge benefit there. Lastly, these ACOGs do not require batteries. They have an etched reticle versus a red dot, huge benefit there. But the top mounted red dot obviously does. So you still have one functional aiming solution. Again, we're getting back to with the red dot magnifier, you have one aiming solution for 2 units versus this, you have 2 aiming solutions for 2 units. So there's that as well. So let's get into cons here. We're specifically going to be discussing ACOG. We can go into primary arms. The prism scopes are actually fairly affordable, but we're just going to be discussing ACOGs. Big con is this is expensive. So typically you're looking at, for the red dot and magnifier, anywhere between $1,300, depending on make and model of both, to $1,800 to $1,900, maybe even $2,000 depending on make and model of both. So that is a pretty significant chunk of change. Another huge downside to it is you are stuck with one magnification setting compared to LPVOs, where you have a lot of them have up to 8 to 10 power. Now, I don't really personally like the 8 to 10 powers. In my experience, the iBox has been absolutely unforgiving. So when I've had those, I've run them closer to 6, but still more magnification. So next on the cons is your red dot. So your red dot is mounted significantly higher than a lot of standard standalone, unless you're going with something like a Unity. And I believe this is even higher than a Unity on its own. So you can just forget cheek weld. I can kind of manage a chin weld on this Bren, but 4 points of contact and a cheek weld is much better for recoil management. Another downside to the ACOGs is most models do not afford a front-mounted red dot, so most of them are rear-mounted, which really makes passive aiming kind of a pain in the ass with these, because you can't really get your tube behind without having to really extend your stock and sit back like that to be able to use your red dot. And see how far I'm reaching out? Not particularly comfortable to me, but it's an available option. Now, another downside to the red dot is the window is significantly smaller, but if you're doing your part, you come behind it the same way every time, and it's not that significantly smaller than a T2. So that is something to be considered, but not as big as most people like to talk. So we're going to move on to the TA50 here. The biggest downside to this is that the field of view is absolute ass. It's less than most magnifiers, definitely less than the TAO2, but you're making trade-offs here. So this guy weighs less than a magnifier alone with both options, and a lot of those issues can be compensated just simply by using the red dot as your primary aiming solution. So you just aim with this. Once you see something out in the distance you need magnification for, you drop down, and guess what? Your ACOG's already in position. So you're able to take those shots, you're able to identify. So a lot of the cons of this can definitely be weighed out just by using it a little different. The way I like to consider this is, I find this to be my preferred red dot magnifier combo. So the red dot is definitely my primary on this, and whenever I need magnification, I just drop down and use my ACOG here. So in conclusion, I really don't think you can go wrong running either. I personally have both, but my own personal opinion and my own personal preference is the ACOG with the top-mounted red dot. I find that this gives me quite a few capabilities that the red dot magnifier does not, and only has a couple setbacks comparably. So everything's a compromise. I like this system. If you like red dot magnifiers, you're not wrong for picking that either, but my personal preference, right? So that's about all I have for you guys today. Don't forget to go outside, touch grass, and eat ass, all right, guys?